everyone, welcome to WeTV. This is Chris and I'm very happy to see you today because of course today is another I Can Make day, and today we are going to make one of my favorite things in the whole world, chocolate chunk, not chip, chocolate chunk cookies. And why do we call them chocolate chunk cookies instead of chocolate chip cookies? Well, because I'm starting with this big bar of chocolate and I'm going to break it into pieces. So we're not going to have just a lot of evenly sized chips, we're going to have big pieces and small pieces, so we call it chocolate chunk cookies, okay? How do you make chocolate chunk cookies? Well, I'm very glad you asked. Let's take a look at our ingredients. First, you're going to need chocolate, of course. You're also going to need brown sugar, which I've got here. You're going to need regular white sugar, here. And vanilla. I love cooking with vanilla. We are going to use flour, salt, and butter, front and center, and eggs, which you can't see, it's hiding under here. And there's one more ingredient I forgot to put here, and that is baking soda. You're going to need baking soda, but you only need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, so it's a very small amount. And what about tools, you might be asking? Well, we're going to use a baking sheet. Some people like to call it a baking pan. Same thing. Basically, it is a long, usually rectangular pan. It's not very deep, very shallow pan, and it's just big enough to cook cookies. Cook cookies. How many cookies could a good cook cook if a good cook could cook cookies? Cookies. Sorry, let's move on. All right, let's go through the steps. First, in a big bowl, we're going to mix the butter, 1 1/4 cups, 3/4 cups of brown sugar, and 3/4 cups of white sugar until it's creamy. So you want to start with soft butter. If your butter is very hard, it's going to be a really difficult thing. You don't want to melt the butter necessarily, you just want the butter to be soft. So it's a good idea to leave your butter out on the counter for maybe an hour or a couple of hours to let it get good and soft before you start making this recipe. Next, we're going to add the eggs one at a time, and we only need 2 eggs. Okay, so 1 egg, mix it in, 1 egg, mix it in, 1 at a time. Now we're going to add 2 1/3 cups of flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. If you don't have baking soda, you can substitute baking powder for baking soda, and in a worst case scenario, you can go without. It's just better if you have it in. Even if it's such a small ingredient, it's still important. Then we will add in our chocolate chunks and nuts. If you want to put in nuts, you can. A lot of people like to put in peanuts or walnuts or pecans. Nuts are really good in chocolate chip cookies, I think, so you could do that. Then we want to bake for 15 minutes or until they're golden brown. Keep an eye on the cookies, don't just put them in the oven and walk away, okay? About 15 minutes is good. Check on them after 10 and then keep an eye on them. If they're a nice brown, take them out, don't let them turn black. You don't want to burn the cookies. Some things are good burnt, cookies not so much. And we're going to bake them at 160 degrees centigrade, okay? And then we want to remove them from the oven and let them cool. You don't want to eat them when they're super hot. You'll burn your mouth and then you'll be all unhappy. And cookies are supposed to make you happy, not unhappy. So let them cool down. Maybe enjoy them with a nice cup of tea or warm milk or, ooh, warm milk tea. Ooh, a green tea latte from Starbucks would be great. Anyway, are you ready? I'm ready. Let's bake. Now, usually when you use brown sugar, it's a good idea to pack the brown sugar. In other words, push it down into the cup. But this is a 1 cup measuring cup, and I need 3/4 of a cup. So I'm going to use 1 cup of loose brown sugar instead of 3/4 cups of packed brown sugar. Should be about right. And today I'm using a fork to mix because these ingredients, as they mix together, it's actually easier with a fork than a spoon or something like that. That's looking fairly creamy, nice and mixed well. So let's go ahead and add our eggs. Okay, so I've got my eggs. These eggs are a little small. So I'm going to go ahead and use 3 eggs instead of 2 eggs because they're so small. Usually I use large eggs. Now, our recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which is a very, very small amount. All right, now I'm going to mix this salt in before I add the flour, and the baking soda is mixed in there as well. And now let's add our flour. So the dough is mixed pretty well. Let's go ahead and add our chocolate chunks. But first, we need to break this chocolate bar up. Mix in the chocolate chunks. So now it's time to put our cookie dough into our baking pan. And I'm using the pie pan from last time just because when I was young, I didn't always like making regular cookies. There's lots of ways to make cookies. You can scoop them up on a spoon and drop them onto the pan and space them apart, and then they bake into nice round cookies. You can roll the dough out on a sheet and then you can cut them, and then you can make cookies into different shapes. But I like to make what I like to call bar cookies. And so I'm just going to fill the bottom of this with dough and then bake it, and then later I'll cut them into different pieces. All right, let's put this in the oven. Like I say, it's going to take about 15 minutes. We're going to keep an eye on it and make sure that it bakes up well. This is a little thicker than a normal cookie would be, so with something like this, I might take a toothpick and poke it through to make sure that it's baked all the way. When you put the toothpick in and take it out, you want to look and see if there's anything on the toothpick. If the toothpick comes out without little pieces of cookie dough on it, then the cookies are just about done. So everyone, check this out. Our giant cookie has come out of the oven. It took a little bit longer, but that's because it's so thick. I mean, this cookie is much thicker than a regular cookie, so it had to bake a lot longer. And in fact, I flipped it over and baked it on the other side just to make sure that it baked all the way through and baked evenly. If you're going to make normal cookies, or even if you're going to make pan cookies like I did, you probably don't want to make them quite as thick as I did. But it can be done, and it looks and smells wonderful. Well everyone, we have made a wonderful giant chocolate chunk cookie, and I can't wait to tear into this thing and share it with all my friends here at WeTV. So you know what that means. It's time to go, and we'll see you next time on WeTV. Goodbye everyone.